Hello and welcome to the Bullying Redirect podcast. I'm your host, Frank DiLallo. I can't describe to you how super excited I am to introduce these two guests to the Bullying Redirect podcast. I was very familiar with Rosalind Wiseman and her groundbreaking work and had a chance to meet her at a conference I presented at about 6 years ago, in which she was the keynote speaker. I found Rosalind to be very approachable and delightful to talk to. When I asked her recently if she would be willing to be a guest on this podcast, she didn't hesitate and was very generous and willing to jump right in. Rosalind asked if we could also include her work partner, Shanterra McBride. These two amazing and powerful women are working hard to make a difference in the world. I feel so honored and privileged to have had the opportunity to spend time learning from them both. From where we learn to where we work, Rosalind Wiseman fosters civil dialogue and inspires communities to build strength, courage, and purpose. She is the founder of Cultures of Dignity, an organization that shifts the way communities think about our physical and emotional well-being by working in close partnership with the experts of those communities, young people, educators, policymakers, and business and political leaders. Rosalind's most recent publications, both released in 2020, include the Distance Learning Playbook for Parents, How to Support Your Child's Academic, Emotional, and Social Learning in Any Setting, and Owning Up Curriculum, empowering young people to create cultures of dignity, understand their emotions, and build essential skills. This is a comprehensive social justice program for grades 4 through 12, which is in widespread use across the world. She is the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Queen Bees and Wannabes, Helping Your Daughter Survive Cliques, Gossip, Boyfriends, and the New Realities of Girl World. This is a groundbreaking, best-selling book that was the basis for the movie and Broadway musical Mean Girls, and in 2016 was fully revised for a 3rd edition. And secondly, New York Times bestseller, and Masterminds and Wingmen, Helping Our Boys Cope with Schoolyard Power, Locker Room Tests, Girlfriends, and the New Rules of Boy World. This addresses the social lives of boys and was awarded Best Parenting Book by Books for Better Life in 2014. National media regularly depends on Wiseman's expertise on ethical leadership, conflict, media literacy, youth culture, parenting, and bullying prevention. She has profiled in the New York Times, People, Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Tribune, the Washington Post, and USA Today. Wiseman is a frequent guest on national media like the Today Show, CNN, and NPR affiliates throughout the country. Wiseman speaks throughout the US and abroad, including South by Southwest, Microsoft, the Royal Society for the Arts, the Association for the Advancement of International Education, the American School Counselors Association, the Game Developers Conference, the American Association of School Administrators at the White House, many times, and numerous schools, governments, organizations, and corporations throughout the US and abroad. She lives in Colorado with her husband and 2 sons. Now, here comes Shanterra. Shanterra McBride is an author, preacher, speaker, and teacher. She is founder of Marvelous University, a social enterprise that offers life coaching and success planning for young people, specializing in leadership development for girls and young women. Her expertise encompasses everything from youth development and youth needs to diversity and inclusion and allyship. She works with young people of all backgrounds, as well as with adults seeking to become better trusted allies in the lives of the young people they interact with. In addition to the US, Shanterra's voice has reached others globally. She has traveled to Morocco and Peru, where she delivered workshops to girls on the permission of valuing themselves and expecting the same from others. She has also spoken in 4 cities in South Africa on girls' empowerment issues, including creating safe spaces, combating gender-based violence, and anti-bullying. Shanterra is the author of Love Your Jiggle, The Girl's Guide to Being Marvelous, an inspirational book for girls ages 11 through 17. Themes covered include self-worth, maintaining friendships, decision-making, conflict management, self-empowerment, and diversity and inclusion. Shanterra earned her master's degree in organizational leadership from Gonzaga University. She obtained her bachelor's degree from SMU in public affairs and corporate communications and sociology, and was awarded the Profiles in Leadership Award for having had a significant impact on the city of Dallas and on the quality of life for girls and women all over the country. Shanterra is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Shanterra believes 3 things have always kept her grounded: her faith, her community of family and friends, and her relationship with her mentees. These constants remind her of her purpose in life, which is to mend, motivate, and empower people, young and young at heart, to believe they are without reservation, completely marvelous. Well, welcome both of you to Bullying Redirect podcast. I'm so excited to have you. This is like over the top. You both are like the dynamic duo. So I'm so excited. Yeah, Wonder Women.
Awesome. We do need capes.
So I want to learn from you today. That's why I do this podcast, so I can learn. You know, I've got a lot to learn, and I've got a lot to learn from both of you, but I want to learn about you too. So Rosalind, why don't you start? Would you tell me, your story and how you got where you're at and doing this work?
Well, I've been doing this work with Shanterra for over about 25 years, I think. I
Wow.
think we're saying over 20, but I think it might be 25. It's in between 20 and 25. And I was running a nonprofit that had the good fortune of being able to work with Shanterra in that nonprofit. So we worked together for many years, and then and developed curriculum together. we do, and you know what, we do like each other. And I also think, well, Shanterra, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think we like each other, and there's not many people that you can go through various phases of life with.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we have weathered many phases of life together, and I think we will continue to do so. And I think I think it's more than you like someone, it's that you can just be with them sort of through thick and thin.
Yeah.
I think that's actually probably more. I think that's what I think of, is like how we've been able to stay and work together, be friends and work together, and finally get to work on something like really official with each other too.
Yeah. I think when people talk about meeting in the 90s, which sounds so like forever ago, and then just these, like you said, these life stages, and still be close. It's important.
Wonderful. So Shanterra, how about you? What got you here? And I'd like to hear some more about how you two met too, and how your work has evolved these last 25 years.
Sure. Well, I moved to DC in 1998. And I joined AmeriCorps Vista, which is like the domestic Peace Corps, but your assignments in the United States. And so I was assigned to this nonprofit in DC, and the executive director, was he? No, he was like director of program. He was somebody he was much bigger than his title. But anyway, his name is Greg Taylor, and he actually told Ross, someone just started here, you're gonna meet her, and like y'all are gonna be friends, and so we heard about each other before we met each other. And so when I did, hear about her and I learned that she started a nonprofit, I was like, oh my gosh, because that's something I wanted to do. I was like, would you go to coffee with me? She's like, sure. And I was like, I want to start a nonprofit. She's like, don't do that. I mean, and I will never, but she's like, don't do that. Just don't do something else. And I was like, you have enough problem. She was getting it's hard. She did. She was like, don't do that. And that, I was like, oh. And so her honesty, here I am. I was young and I was ready to change the world. And I was like, the only way you can do that is I must do what she's doing. And she's like, nope, don't do that. Just don't
learn from my mistakes.
She was really honest about the work and how hard it is and how, just don't do it. And then like a year and a half later, she calls me. She's like, hey, do you want to be director of programs for my nonprofit?
I forgot about that. It's like cognitive dissonance, right? I have cognitive dissonance in so many ways. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Was like, so don't start one. Okay, cool. You want to work at this one? I was like, now what are you doing? Because so much time had passed since, we just lived our lives. And then when she called me, I was like, I'm moving. Well, and I remember explaining this to her. I remember driving in Silver Spring, which is so random because I was also driving in Silver Spring when I decided to move to California. But anyway, I was driving in Silver Spring and I was like, oh my gosh, I am on my way home to Dallas. I was going to move because my brother needed a kidney, but then I prayed about it. And so I decided, and I knew I wasn't supposed to give him my kidney, but I'm still going home, but I'm coming. Like I shared all of this with her. And I was like, but I'm coming back. So can we talk when I get back? And I remember her saying, okay. Dumped all this stuff. And then she was like, sure. How about you send me your resume and we'll talk when you're in Dallas? I was like, okay. And I remember hanging up the phone, like, I think I got a job, but let me go home to Dallas for 2 weeks and maybe we'll talk. And we did. And so when I got back, I started working with Ross.
One of the pros and cons of Shanterra is that she has a very good memory, because I don't remember any of that. I mean, I remember little bits of it. Like I do recognize it as true, but I don't recognize like
well, that's what happens after
all of it. But yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one person in the relationship has to remember something.
And so, though I have to know you for 25 years before I call you Roz.
Oh.
I do call her Rosalind.
Yeah. It's helpful. It's it's one of those things where I know that when people call me Rosalind, I'm in work mode.
Yeah. I'll say Rosalind.
So you've obviously, my guess is that you've influenced each other. What outside influences have influences your work and your work together? People.
So many things. So many things. My goodness. You want to take a stab at that first?
Yeah, I'll start. I think that one of the things I appreciated about our work when we worked together at the nonprofit, it was that the voices of young people were important, right? They were not like this afterthought. They were real, like they were at the table. We had a growth advisory board. We really wanted to make sure that young people were at the forefront. And I think as I've, even developed in my own work, this youth development approach of partnering with young people. I didn't know that's what we were doing then, but as I learned about the different ways you can work with young people and in their development, because young people don't need adults to develop, right? They're going to develop with or without us. But we seem to think, oh, we need to be in that. They need us, and they really, they don't. I mean, they're going to go through adolescence whether or not an adult is a part of their lives. And so I think one thing I learned when we were working together is that the voices of young people we can't treat them like an afterthought. We can't create this whole thing and then expect young people to be like, oh my God, you did this for me. Because they may be like, that's not what I asked for. And so that has influenced everything that I've done. I mean, it influenced like not only the work, but how I in relationship with my family, with my cousins, with my, my family is just like, we don't know. Because I grew up in the generation where young people are seen and not heard. And then you left the room for grown folks conversations. You are not, And so when I'm inviting my cousins, to the table, like they need to be in it. And it's weird to my family because they're like, we don't. So I think that's an influence that for me started. I didn't really make the connection of that it was already in me, but then magnified when we work together. And then it's just part of the work.
Well, as a country, we have a tendency to really discount youth and
For sure.
their voices and their ideas. And I mean, they're wise.
They have brains. Like they're actually like, and we expect that our culture teaches them that we think of them when they can vote. Like that's when they really matter. Like when you can do something to affect policy change, that's when you matter. And I'm like, no, because actually every policy change affects them without them even being able to vote. So it's like the idea that they become important when they can do something for us is whack. It's not even, it's like they're not even a human being until you can do something that contributes to my life. What is that, right? So
have you
I think Shanterra, I think I want to share like an insight when you're asking like why we, what are the influences or how we've influenced each other or other people. And so for me, for example, like Shanterra said something a few minutes ago that I think is really important and dovetails a lot with the way that I look at my work, which is the assumptions we make and what is not said. And so when Shanterra says young people are going to develop with or without us, that's true. And the assumption, I mean, I agree with that. And I think that's true. Like it's factually true. Young people are going to develop with or without us. The thing that we, I think adults think is that the assumption is they can't develop without us because there's an assumption behind that we have to be there to help them develop. And I think the assumption, like, first of all, that like if you just have a child, whether or not, it depends on, how good that is, but they're going to develop. That's true. And then the second is we don't like to admit that sometimes adults are not great for young people's development. And, the assumption that all adults are good for young people's development is actually really not true. And it stops us from being able, I think, to be able to honestly understand why young people sometimes are disengaged from us. And so these assumptions we make about adults always being sort of good in their influence are just not accurate. And so because we work with young people so much, I think a lot of our job is to acknowledge when these assumptions are not right. And so if we're going to be involved in their development, then it's more a question of how. Yeah. So that's the way I look at when Shanterra says things like that. I haven't thought of it like that, but when she says it, I mean, I know this about her. I know that's her approach, and it's always been like, yeah, that's true. And I hadn't thought of it like that before. So, I learn a lot from her, and I also learn a lot, of course, from young people. And I mean, I really feel like I'm just constantly learning from all different there. Like I can't keep up with all the things that I want to learn, from how to teach better, and how the brain works, and how adolescence and the brain works, and diversity and equity issues, and how that connects to our work, which it always has, whether we, you know, in so many different kinds of ways. And I just feel like I'm constantly learning, and so many, I can't keep up with the amount of things I want to read, watch,
And listen to, and yeah.
and listen, right?
Cultures of
Listen,
dignity.
watch.
A big part of your work is to engage youth. Am I correct?
Hmm.
So
Yes, absolutely.
how do you do that?
Well, I mean, I think what Shanterra said is absolutely 100, absolutely accurate. Is that you bring them in not as things that you're going to get information from, but that you work in partnership with them. So, well, I'm about to do a webinar with a psychiatric on Thursday. I'm going to do a webinar on mental health in young people with a psychiatric nurse, because I didn't know, Shanterra, I don't know if you know this, I didn't know that psychiatric nurses can do pretty much, I mean, maybe this is like super wrong, but psychiatric help is so hard to find for young people. And I did not know until about 6 months ago how important the role is of psychiatric nurses is with young people, and what they can do to help.
Mhm.
So we have a psychiatric nurse, who's coming to be a part of a webinar with 3 of our teen advisors. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about why what adults say that are not helpful to young people about mental health. And then the other thing we're going to talk about is, why would a well-meaning adult, like a parent who tries so hard to be a good parent, why would your child still not want to talk to you?
Yeah.
And if they're struggling. And so we're going to spend a whole section of the webinar on that. And I'm just facilitating. I'm just facilitating and listening to their answers and asking questions. So that's the way I think that's what we, and just like what Shanterra said, like that's what we do. We partner with young people to be able to work with them.
And I
A whole
imagine,
different- that's a whole different view
yeah, I mean,
than most adults take, I think.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Ross, just even hearing you say that, and I think about bullying, and I think about how people, well-meaning adults, would say to kids, "Oh, you'll get over it," or "I went through it, and so you'll be fine." You know, these things of how we used to always talk about, violence should not be a rite of passage, and that's how bullying was looked at. It wasn't looked at as this rite of passage. So I would be so curious to hear some of the things that regarding mental health that adults say, and the connection to the same things that they would say when a young person says, "I'm being teased," or "I'm being excluded," or "I'm being," and just the again, well-meaning wrong advice that adults, not just parents, because we know that it takes more than parents to raise children, but it's like this thing that adults would say to young people. I bet you the connection is very, very similar when it comes to mental health, because most of it is, "Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine."
So when is the webinar, Rosalind?
Oh, it's Thursday at 5 p.m. It's East Coast time, so it's 3 p.m. Mountain time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So say a bit more about cultures of dignity and
Cultures of Dignity is an organization that works with schools and educational systems to do work in the social emotional learning field. We do curriculum development and a lot of long over the course of time teacher development, a few less and less on just like presentations, but we do a lot of teacher development, and then some work with young people, some to be in front of young people, but it's everything about like what young people are dealing with today. And so we watch and see and talk to them, and then we put back the information that they need, that we can then talk to parents and teachers.
and do you work together with that, or you're doing the same thing separately in
Well,
different
but
parts of the world?
sometimes we've had, I was telling Shanterra that we're like cursed recently with a couple of yeah, Shanterra does work with us sometimes, and I wish it more. And the last 2 times or 3 times, it hasn't worked out for like bureaucratic reasons. So it's been so frustrating. But yes, technically, yes, that is the correct answer. Both are the correct answer.
Yes.
We've gotten so caught up in state bureaucracy one time, and then like federal bureaucracy another time. So, but I remain hopeful.
Yeah. It's so I'm a contractor with Cultures of Dignity. And so so I get to, because of course I believe in the mission and the vision and what the organization stands for. And so it's an easy fit to say, oh, of course I would, do this. And I think that has been our relationship. It's like, oh, you're doing that? Oh, of course. So it's not, unless I can't think of anything that Cultures of Dignity will do that I'll be like, no, that goes against my principle. I can't even think of that, because I know what the company stands for. So yeah, we still get to work together under that umbrella.
When you're working with a community, what kind of shift do you think that they need to make? I mean, obviously, we talked about shifting our view about youth and looking at them more in a partnership and not a one up, one down, or garnering information from them or whatever. That it's a partnership. So that's one shift that you're trying to make. Well, what else? Give me some more scope with how you'd work to shift the community to on how they are together, and what needs to be shifting.
I found it takes a lot of work to get adults to even shift to this partnership idea. And I like to ask adults about the adults that they had in their lives, because of course we tend to either be what we had or be what we didn't have, even though as teenagers we say, I will not be like my mom when I grow up. And then it was so funny, I was with friends this weekend and they kept calling me my mom's name, and because they said I sounded like her and I was acting like her, and I was like, I refuse. No, stop that. And
that's funny.
And I think that for a lot of adults, this idea of really treating young people as if without them in their lives, young people will fail. And it's this, and that's a lot of work for adults. I'm like, take that pressure off of you. Stop. Don't, and just stop it. Because, and this is what I like to get adults to understand, is that when I say young people are going to develop, I didn't say whether it was positive development or negative. I said that they are going to develop. And a lot of times in our minds, we don't give credit to the person in the neighborhood, let's say the drug dealer, who we may not, want our kids to hang around, but that person pays attention to young people. That person knows how to give young people value. They know how to say, I need you. Without you, I wouldn't be able to build this empire. They know how to give safety and structure. I'm gonna look out for you. You're gonna have this whole crew. Like that gang leader, they understand youth needs and youth development. So it's like getting adults to understand it's not that there is no distinction. And I think that freezes a lot of adults. There's no distinction between positive youth development and negative youth development. When I say they're going to develop, they're going to go through adolescence. They are going to go through this stage. And so I think getting adults to ingest that takes a while. And then we can talk about how to invite young people to the table, how to include them, and all young people, not just the ones on the A honor roll, not just the ones, like doing the great job that we're so impressed because they're easiest to work with. Like, right? Like we don't, and sometimes adults don't really admit, don't nobody want to work with that kid who don't come to class because they're not coming to class. We don't want to go look for them. And so it's those kind of things to get adults to understand, if you're really wanting young people to know that they are important to you, does that mean all young people or just the young people who make good grades? Or just the young people who ask the most questions in your class? Or just the young person, who shows up for every, faith-based service? And the young what are we talking about? Because whether we admit it or not, we have a scale in our head. And I think getting adults to understand that can be transforming. That is what leads to transformation in communities.
So a lot of the focus is on the adults and getting them to understand that.
Oh yeah. I don't want to change a young person because they're growing. They're experimenting. They're asking very tough questions that, makes us hold a mirror to our, and so it's just like, God. But adults, getting them to listen, getting them to think outside of their norm, getting them to not just be what they saw, especially if what they saw wasn't healthy. That, to me, that's the community work.
Mm-hmm. And you get the students and the adults communicating together, and so that the adults hear some of that from the youth on.
Yeah.
How does that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's all of the lesson plans and everything that we do and the way we teach, but we both teach teachers and parents is to how do we listen to them to be able to, as like what I would say is, young people have the context for their lives. We can give them content, our wisdom about our experiences, but we need to listen to the context first. So everything that we do, which is connected to young people, informing the lesson plans or what Shanterra does or anything like that, is that we, since it's all informed by young people, then what we're teaching teachers is a reflection of that. And so so not only are we role modeling it, but we're teaching the teachers and the parents, to be in conversation with their kids and their students in a different way.
What kind of shifts do you see happening? I mean, I share some success stories, with adults, with parents, with teachers, with administration, and with youth.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about your pastoral work?
Oh,
I feel like, or does that count?
Well, I think there has been a shift in some churches. I'm doing this program with some churches in Arkansas, and it's really helping, excuse me, to get to, again, not see young people as an afterthought. And I remember when I started working with this one church, they did not have young people attending the church, like at all. And they actually like, we gotta go find some young people. I said, well, you see them every day because y'all are right next door to the YMCA. Like, so y'all actually see young people every single day. And here we are a year later, and they just invited young people in and was like, we want to do this youth thing, but we don't really honest, instead of making up a story, because I think adults don't like to admit when we have messed up and we need you. And I have found that anytime I say that to young people, they're like, oh, what can you need me? What can I do? Right? Like, what? Because
you're admitting what people do.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And right. And so, and it's also like, I have value. I am needed. I am wanted. And what I love about this is that the church was really like, we don't know what we're doing. And the young people like, you don't. And so let us help you. And it has been phenomenal. Like now they have young people, and now those young people are inviting their families. Because I tell churches all the time, you get the youth involved, you don't get the family involved, you're gonna grow your church. But it was like this again, these were not young people who grew up in their church. These were not young people who were a part of, their families didn't name a pew and build it. This was kids that were next door. And the adults were like, I think we should just invite them. And it started off small. I was like, let's invite them for snack. Let's just see if we can, if they need anything, if their families need anything. But that, I consider that a success story, because now, I mean, the young people tried this program in a neighboring apartment community. It failed. It failed big time. Oh my God. Like it failed bad. But the young people, the adults were like, oh no, we're so sorry. But the young people were so hyped. They were just like, okay, we got to try it again. And we got to do the, and because they led it, they did it. They went back to the drawing board. So I just think, I don't know, I considered that a success story that I had nothing to do with. I was just like, ask the young people.
So youth are the focus, and they're going to energize the community. And
well, they could really frustrate a community. One of the things about working with young people is you will have moments of thinking, why in the world did I think this was a good idea?
Yeah.
This is a pain in the butt, because sometimes you have to have with young people, what is the difference between having a voice and and a vote? Some organizations, some schools, some communities want them to have a voice and feel much more conflicted about giving young people a vote.
Mm-hmm.
And some people about, a real vote at the table. And so, and then when young people don't get the vote, sometimes they get a little annoyed. And young people, when they get mobilized about things, you really can have these moments of, wait, why did I think this was a good idea? And the other part, like Shanterra said, is they're going to make mistakes. And the other Shanterra and I have gone through this together, where young people, you give them a lot of responsibility, and because it's a process and they're going to make mistakes. And if you give them a lot of leadership, they're going to make mistakes publicly. And that's going to make you maybe not look so great. And so then that sort of hits your reputation. And then you want to, protect your reputation. So then you can really be tempted to like micromanage and come in there and start doing it. But really, if you really, really have to walk the walk about this, and it's not 100% one way. There are times when I think you have to step in, but you have to know that when you do this with young people, that they're going to make mistakes, and it's going to be public, and it's going to be not so great. And then at this other time, you have to think like, wow, well, adults do it all the time. We make mistakes, we do mistakes publicly all the time too. So just, remembering that, but it is part of the process of regret, of having these moments of like, why did I do this in the first place? And, I think for us at Cultures, and for me, one of the biggest successes we've had sort of policy wise, because I think it's important. And I love when kids can talk to their parents more easily. It's really important for people to do that. I don't think Shanterra and I are both in the business of, if I just change one person, it's worth it. Because we're not working this hard to change like one person. That's not why we do what we do.
Change the world.
And yeah, well, but it's just not good enough to say like, oh, well, I reached one person. Like, no, actually, I'm not working. We're not working this hard to do that. So while that's important, and I really, it warms my heart when I get an email from a child or a young person that says, I'm talking to my parents in a way that I never had, or a parent says that to me, or a teacher says, in my class, things are going much better because of the way that I co-created guidelines with my students today, instead of just telling them what to do to start, which is what I've been doing a lot this school year, this last couple of weeks. But policy-wise, we had the international school associations put into their formal structure that they would have young people have a voice at the table in leadership decisions at in the international schools around the world. And that connected to what they would call under the umbrella of child harm. So that's everything from peer-to-peer bullying to sexual predation of adults to students. and that they want that, like, under the mantle of child harm, that they would go to young people to ask them and to have them at the table, and to just constantly realize that they have a tremendous amount of wisdom. So specifically, why wouldn't they report? When we tell them constantly to report if somebody's inappropriate with them or sexually inappropriate with them, report. But a lot of kids don't. Why not? Well, we don't really ask them. We actually don't ask them. And so in the policies of what we've been doing with the international schools, that is now much more a part of the formalized process that schools around the world are doing. And that makes me feel pretty good.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how you're going in, you're shaking things up, you're educating, you're getting the adults to empower youth and their voice, you're getting them to the table, then you leave. How is that sustained in those communities? How is that energy and that momentum sustained?
Well, I think part of it, I used to feel like I'm going in, I'm speaking, I'm doing this work, and then I get to leave, and then they have to do, and I used to feel kind of like, wait, I should stay in a community. And I did that. And then I was like, oh, okay, now I'm leaving, and I'm going to do, and I just think that part of my role is to make sure that the work is not about me. And that I need to make sure that whoever is left to do the work feels equipped, feels feels ready, feels confident that they can do it. Because once I make it about me, it becomes this thing that will just sit on the shelf, or that will just sit like, that was a great training. All right, then. And they will go right back to how it was. But if I don't think I've done my job if they don't feel equipped and ready, and and confident in being able to. Because the thing is, it's like, I mean, yeah, I'm a speaker, and I love what I do, but it means nothing if the feeling, if the power can only happen as long as I'm in the room. That's not real, right? And so for me, it's important that the adults, whoever has to implement whatever it is, that they feel equipped and ready and confident, in what we can, in what we're doing.
So you mentioned,
I would agree.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I agree.
You mentioned parents too. So is it bringing parents to the table too? So you have, school administrators, school personnel, students, and parents all at the table.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, but that doesn't, I don't know really what that means. I think that we really, like, yes, and, I think that, what does it mean to get parents to participate? What does it mean to have a wide range of parents, at the table? How do you get beyond the people that usually have the time, resources, and for whatever reason, the motivation to participate? And there's lots of different motivations about why to show up and be at the table. And so I think we really have to think very carefully about what those kinds of concepts mean. Do you require that parents that they participate in understanding the what it means to be part of a community in their school? Well, then that leads itself to a whole another set of issues about equity and about how do parents know about this, and that then goes to technology, and then that goes to and how you're scheduling them and all of those things. So I really want us to be careful when we talk about how we get parents to the table, because what that means a lot, or what defaults when we think of it like that, is that it's the parents who have the resources, inclination, and the various reasons, motivations, some of which are not awesome, to participate in these kinds of initiatives. And and sometimes parents who participate a lot feel that they have more of a voice than the parents who don't come, because they assume that the parents who don't come don't want to come. And that's not sometimes the case. And so for me, a lot of these issues are about taking a step back from that kind of, from like, well, what does it mean to be in a community of learners and the adults who are responsible to them, to create for everyone who is there, staff, faculty, parents, and children, an equitable way to be in community together. That to me is where we, like, that's even maybe the starting place for how to even begin to approach, how do you get parents to be involved in a school?
Because it's usually on our schedule. It's usually on what's most convenient, and not that, I mean, we work with plenty of schools who have meetings or meet the teacher, and it's not just right after school, or it's not, they really try to make accommodations. But I think a lot of times our forethought is, okay, this works for me and this works for mine, so this what we gonna do. And it's just like, no, that is not creating an equitable opportunity or environment. I could say so much about that being in Texas, but I won't. But
not today, you won't.
Not today.
I'm getting a handle on the community building aspect of this, engaging the community and empowering the community. Help me out with the dignity end of it. When I think of dignity, I hear respect and affirmation and acceptance and in diversity, in there as well. So help me connect the cultures, communities with dignity.
Sure. So we really distinguish between the word respect and the word dignity, because they mean very different things. And respect for young people, especially young people who are in, public, for the most part, our public education system has been built on a definition of respect that actually means obedience and compliance. It does not actually, like, the way in which we enforce the word respect is different than the way we tend to use respect or think of the word respect. And a lot of us, actually, we assume that the word respect, we all agree about what that means. And the word respect actually really depends on the culture that you grew up in, the context that you grew up in. So the definition of the word, like its root word, and I'm obsessed with root words and like what they mean and how they come about, and then how do they change their meaning over time. The root definition of the word respect is to look back at someone's achievements and admire how they have achieved them. That the only reason why they have the position that they have is because they have earned it by their actions. So respect is not just a given. By the root definition of it, it is earned. And dignity, in contrast, is to be worthy, just to be inherently worthy, and it is a given that you just have. And that, yes, people might try and take it away from you, but really, like, dignity is just inherent to who you are. And so a really good way, I think, to think about it is that when a child comes up to a teacher and says, this kid was being really mean to me on the playground, and the teacher says, you don't have to be friends with them, but you have to respect them. The child's not coming to the teacher because the child is coming to the teacher because they don't like what the other child has done. They're not coming to the teacher because they're saying, this person is inherently unworthy. They're saying, I don't like what this kid has done to me. And so actually young people really do understand the word respect. And I think adults, as we get older, we tend to forget how incredibly complicated that word is. And so the other part of this is that people who are in positions of respect, it's not unusual for people in positions of respect, meaning authority, to abuse that position to not treat people with dignity. And when that happens, young people see it. They see it in their coaches. They see it with their religious leaders. They see it with their parents, their grandparents, people in their family, people parents on an athletic field. And these are all people they're supposed to respect because of their position, but they're not treating people with dignity. And that's why young people very often think that respect is this word that's just used to get them to comply. And the last part I would say about it is that, especially for minority kids or kids who have less resources, we know from the way that they are disciplined in schools disproportionately to white kids in middle class kids and above, is that when they don't like something and they are talking, and I've seen this so many times in my life as a teacher, that when I've seen a kid who doesn't like what's happening with a teacher and they are talking about it. And maybe they're talking about it as a teenager does, not maybe with the most most lovely, polite way of saying something, but they're teenagers. And they say something in the adult that they don't like, and the adult's response is to say, you're being defiant. You are being disrespectful and defiant. And because you're being defiant, I get to punish you. And that is really one of the most extraordinarily powerful ways to disengage a student from the educational system, and frankly, also to reinforce power dynamics based on race, socioeconomic class, all different things. So these words mean something. And Shanterra and I are not talking about respect and to be, careful about this word because we want to be politically correct. And neither one of us care about that word at all, that term at all. What we want is for people to treat each other with dignity and to treat the word respect with the gravitas that it actually deserves, so that we know what we're talking about. We have a common language for it, common understanding of it.
Thank you. Wow. Powerful. So I want to move to the inspirational share questions. Are you ready?
Okay. Do you have them? Because I don't know.
I do. Yeah. From what or from whom do you acquire daily inspiration?
I'll start.
I know who you're going to say.
Listen.
Well, let's see if those 25 years
can I guess who you're going to say?
anything.
Yes, you can guess who I'm going to say.
You're going to say Olivia.
My niecey poo. Listen, she is almost 2. And oh my goodness, she is brilliant. And I'm sure everybody will say that about their kid, but she is brilliant. And she is my
Did I ever say that about my own children? I don't think I did. Yeah, you would have known. I'm not sure if I ever did. But in any case, go ahead.
But she is my daily inspiration. Like, I have realized I'm going to cry. As soon as she showed up in the world,
everything was right.
And it shifted why I do what I do. It shifted, like it immediately. Oh my God, like everything. I don't want her to have to do what I'm doing. Like everything that I do, everything that I'd say, now she is all for her. She is my daily.
But if she does end up doing slightly the things that Shanterra does, she will be very good at it.
She will, because she's brilliant.
How about
She'll
you?
be very good at it. My daily inspiration?
Yeah, from what or from whom do you acquire daily?
Yeah. Shanterra and I have been writing this book called Courageous Discomfort for the last 8 months. It's the fastest book it's the most complex topic and the fastest I've ever read written a book. And there's a lot that I learned from Shanterra just in the process of this process. And this is a book about race and racism, systemic racism, why people can be, for example, so resistant to those words, and it's based on 20 questions of what we've heard white people, for the most part, ask in all of our work that we've been doing all these years in all different kinds of capacities. And we're right at the tail end of handing in it's gone from a rough draft to a less rough. We're right on that. It's getting good. It's getting good. And you know, I was thinking about, because at the you know, we're at the end where you really have to say, okay, is this really, am I good with what's on the page? And especially with something like this. And Shanterra, I think both of us are pretty used to. I mean, my goodness, she's a pastor in like Arkansas and Texas and all the, right? And we regularly, both of us have regularly put ourselves in communities that might think differently than us on some pretty important topics. And so I think the process of going through this, I just don't think you can do with a lot of people. And because it requires a tremendous amount of fortitude in a lot of different ways, and trust and patience and holding space and all of these things. And so I think that is inspiring, because it makes me feel like I'm definitely walking the walk. Right. Like, I'm not just on the content, but the content is inextricably tied to what we are doing, obviously, but just, you know, it's really like, I don't know what's going to happen. We're both putting ourselves out there. People might get a little annoyed with us with this book. And, you know, my white privilege is definitely on the line here.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, people could read this and think, I don't want Rosalind. She's not safe anymore. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was good when everything was Mean Girls. Like Mean Girls, then I don't need to think about it for myself. I can think about all these other girls that my child has in their house that I don't like, you know, things like that people do, or they, you know, read my books and say, oh, this kid down the, you know, in the, and, you know, whatever. It's different. Let me just say it's different. Yeah. And so it's also really funny meaning interesting, compelling, frightening, messy, nerve-wracking, like all those things, to really be like, yeah, you know, you put yourself in many different uncomfortable situations in your life, and you stand by every single one I've done. And I think I said to Shanterra, I think I said like a couple of days ago, I think this might be, and I think we'll be successful this way, is if people from all different kinds of the so-called political spectrum are annoyed with us as a result of what they read. If everybody's frustrated with us, if everybody sort of who thinks they can yip about these issues is angry at us, I think we've done our job.
Well, that's how you make a difference in the world, right?
It's gonna be great.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
So what one routine or ritual do you do that motivates you for the day when, for whatever reason, then given day, you don't do that thing, it leaves you feeling out of sorts or even a little grumpy?
For me, it's movement. Like I really have decided that, and I intentionally don't use the word exercise because that sounds like a chore. And movement sounds like a choice. And I choose to move every day. So whether it's yoga, whether it's stretching, whether it's meditation, you know, whether I'm outside, whether it's every day. And I find when I don't do it or I'm unable to do it, I'm not a happy person. And people around me aren't happy, because when I'm not happy,
Awesome.
I tend to affect everybody else.
Me too. That is very true with Shanterra. Yeah. I think the only person who actually is more that way than I know is Shanterra.
Yeah, that's our thing. We both have to move. And so even in writing this book, she's like, okay, I gotta go walk, I gotta go outside, I gotta go meditate, I gotta go breathe, I gotta go, you know, and I think that's important for people to understand, that it's not about exercise, but it is about moving in some kind of way.
Nice.
Yeah, I was having a meltdown yesterday.
Oh, we did it.
Yes, we did. I said, I need to leave now and I need to go outside.
Exactly.
So share a favorite poem, book, song, quote that helps you keep you balanced and grounded.
A favorite song, my favorite song for me, and I actually have it tattooed, not the whole thing, but I just have It Is Well. And it's a gospel hymn, and it is something that no matter what is happening, it is well. it is well with my soul. It is well. It is well. And I find myself looking. Say that again.
It's a powerful song.
Listen, I sang it at both of my grandmother's homegoing celebrations, and I sing it at a friend's homegoing celebration. Like it is, and I think having to learn it and all the verses really helped me. Like, huh?
You
Okay.
embodied it.
Yeah.
And
So
even
that,
tattooed.
yeah, and I remember when I got this tattoo, and my grandmother, one of them, she was like, "Do you feel better?" Because she hated tattoos. And I was like, "Yes." She hated it. So, do you feel better that you got that? Yes.
I can totally see that.
Rosalind?
Okay, well, because it's top of mind and I couldn't remember it. I'm getting my sea legs with my professional development, like presenting, and so I've been done 3 in the last couple of weeks, and I was standing in front of a couple hundred people last week in Massachusetts, and I was having this amazing moment, and I was trying, and I thought of this amazing quote that just went out of my head, and then I know Shanterra's going to know the quote I'm talking about. so she wrote to me later, which is the quote, and that's the one I would choose, which is from James Baldwin. And it is, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." That is the quote that I'm really really thinking about. And James Baldwin, by the way, Shanterra and I were talking about it this morning, would not agree, I don't think, with the dignity is inherently worthy in all people, no matter how you treat that quote I just said is in not conflict, but is in dynamic tension with dignity is inherent in all people. Because what if you have somebody who is purposely, systemically going after you, and rooted, and is going after you rooted in wanting to oppress you? What does that look like? And so that's for me, the dynamic tension that I'm constantly thinking about. Don't have an answer to, but definitely think a lot about.
Wow. So what's the best piece of advice that you've been given to you or modeled for you that you would like to pass on to others?
I think I know mine.
Go ahead.
I think because mine is, if people are going to get angry at you, then choose what they are going to be angry at you about. So if people are going to be upset with me about something that I say or do, then I need to be very thoughtful about what I'm saying and doing so that I can stand behind what it is and say, no, this is the reason why. So if you're frustrated and upset with me, we can have a conversation about it, but I did not come to this lightly. And that is rooted in someone's dignity. So I think that's, for me, that was more just what I realized, especially when I was doing the work on homophobia about 20 years ago. It's like, you know what, if people are going to get really mad at me about taking a stand for young people being able to express their and be not shamed for their sexuality or their gender orientation, their sexual orientation, I'm going to stand behind that, and I'm going to know how. So that's for me has been really a guiding principle.
Shanterra.
And I think for me, it's I remember when I was given the permission to trust my instinct. And I think that has really carried me. Like I'm a feel person, and I really pay attention to my gut and my intuition. And I can't remember. Yeah, I definitely pay attention to my inner voice. And if something just don't feel right, and this doesn't matter that I used to feel like I had to explain it to get people to basically respect my choice, whether it was yes or no, whatever. But now I'm just like, that don't feel right. And that has, and I think for so many things, that advice has taken me, it has sustained me. It has sustained me. Trust your gut.
So say the name of your book coming out and when it's coming out. And so we have something to look forward to.
I know that it's called Courageous Discomfort, How to Have Brave, Important, Life-Changing Conversations About Race and Racism. When is it coming out? Spring?
May of 22.
May. Awesome.
So get ready.
Well, congratulations. And I'm sure there's a lot of hard work. And it sounds like
just a little.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I am so inspired by both of you. You are incredible women. And
we are.
So amazing. Yeah.
I can't.
You agree?
Well, thank you.
Just incredible and so inspiring. And I thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And we'll launch it as soon as possible and get it out to the world so we can change the world together, you know?
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Well, how incredible, how amazing was that? These two powerful women. I am so excited. I learned tons, and I'm grateful. I've got 10 key takeaways that I want to end our podcast with. So number one, there is a false assumption by adults that we need to be there for young people or that they will fail. They just won't develop. It's a false assumption. Number two, young people will develop with or without adults. As adults, we need to understand that. Number three, Rosalind and Shanterra are working hard to create a paradigm shift with adults from viewing young people as an afterthought or in the background to placing young people at the forefront, to view young people as partners with an important voice to have at the table. This includes all youth, not just the ones on the honor roll or in athletics. For instance, if you want to find out why our young people aren't reporting incidents of bullying or being inappropriate, sexually or otherwise, we need to ask them. That oftentimes we don't ask them. So just ask them why they're not reporting and they'll tell you honestly. Rosalind and Shanterra distinguish between respect and dignity. I learned a lot in this arena. In general, the word respect is defined to come to mean obedience and compliance. And young people often think the word respect is just a word that gets used to get them to comply. One of the most extraordinarily powerful ways to disengage students from the educational system is to reinforce power dynamics based on race and socioeconomic class is for adults to use or abuse or misuse their position of authority, to use respect. And how they use it, how we use it as adults oftentimes, which is to force obedience and compliance with young people. This is not treating young people, with dignity. For example, minority kids or kids who have less resources are disciplined in schools disproportionately to middle class kids and above. Dignity, on the other hand, is to be inherently worthy, a given that you just have. To respect something you earn this position. Dignity is you're inherently worthy, a given that you just have. Dignity is inherent to who you are. Dignity is a way to co-create an equitable way to be with each other in community. Please check out the websites listed at the end of the podcast, especially Cultures of Dignity, which is Rosalind and Shanterra's website with a lot more information than we could share here in this podcast. and links to both of their books, which you could find anywhere you buy books online. Thank you so much for joining me with the Bullying Redirect podcast. Be well, be safe, and take good care to build cultures of dignity in your community or organization. Of life.